Hello and welcome back to Bit of an Animal, the South African Rugby Union podcast here on the Global Gainlines YouTube channel. We're an exciting episode this week. We preview the Springbok game against Argentina in Durban and the Women's World Cup overview, semi-final review and final preview, as well as the Currie Cup Final review, as well as we look forward to the URC round one. I'm joined this evening by Thembinkosi and John. Lisa B couldn't make it this evening. She is at the Kruger National Park, to the best of my knowledge. Let's start the show. Topic number one, gentlemen. Springboks versus Argentina in the Kingdom of the Zulu, KwaZulu-Natal province. Thembinkosi, your thoughts on the announced team? The Argentinian team have not announced their team as of recording on Wednesday, Heritage Day. Happy Heritage Day, everybody. The 24th of September.
Happy Heritage Day to everyone. Looking at the squad, is basically the same squad as last week. Like we were speaking about before, the only changes are, as you can see, is like injury-prone changes. Otherwise, it's basically the exact same team.
Jean, do you think a consistent team is going to reap rewards in this game? I think considering that this rugby championship, we lost the game to Australia, then we defeated Australia, then we lost the game to New Zealand, then we defeated New Zealand. Are we going to break that pattern now and actually win a game in Durban?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be a difficult one. Argentina are certainly a team who they're definitely no longer a 40-minute or a 60-minute team. They're an 80-minute team. I think I think the team here is pretty much who you want. Argentina's got a ferocious backline. They've got some of the best centers in the world. They've got a 10 who just he finds space. He's got a laser pass. He's quick off the boot. They've got deadly wingers. So I think this is the sort of backline you need in order to contain him, and to sort of put them in a box and match them physically, because you need the size, and I think you need that bit of a chip on the shoulder that comes with youth. And we've got enough veterans to deal with the other stuff. One thing that I think influenced it a lot is the fact that Argentina is probably the team that kicked the most, except for us. It's between us and Argentina. We are the two teams who like to send it into the air. So having guys like Willemse, Moody, Cheslin, Ethan Hooker, who are all who can all chase, they've got a bit of length to them. If they get speed and they're chasing, and they can jump, then it's a pretty big height advantage. So I think that influenced it a lot. And yeah, I'm hoping we can break that trend. It would be nice to sort of swing the momentum the other way, but treading lightly for Argentina. They've taken names.
Yeah, having defeated the Rugby Championship is very close this year. So Argentina have victories this season against Australia and New Zealand, having defeated New Zealand for the first time in Argentina. So that's very good for them. Worth noting that next week's game won't actually be in Argentina. It will be at Twickenham, which is interesting. I didn't realize that was in Argentina, but we understand why their union did that. It's a means for them to generate funds, and we can't begrudge them that. Looking at the squad, we've spoken earlier offline about certain players playing a lot, and not certain players not playing that much. I'm a bit concerned at the amount of game time Oxen Chair plays as a Shark supporter. Malcolm Marx, I'm expecting a bit better from him. Him and Bongi Mbonambi haven't been that to their usual level this international season thus far, although there are reports that Bongi Mbonambi recently got time off from the Springboks because he had to address sort of a personal issue. So happy to have him back in the squad as well, even though he's not in this team. So there's Bongi, and then we've got Jan Hendrik Wessels, as well as Van der Merwe and Malcolm Marx sort of vying for that starting and or on the bench hooker position. Thomas du Toit playing out in England for Bath, former Shark. He can play on both sides of the scrum. Glad to see him in the mix. I'm particularly looking at the front row with Bowen Venter being somebody that Scotland made no bones about the fact that they were intending to cap him as soon as he was eligible. Now very much in the squad, not just playing 1 or 2 games, and playing relatively well. And then Wilco Louw, interesting aspect of Wilco Louw, when he returned to South Africa to play for the Bulls, having left Harlequins, starting his career at the Stormers, he didn't immediately slot back into the Springbok team, which people were somewhat surprised by. But that speaks to the maturity of the South African system, that you don't just, no one's guaranteed a spot. It's a fight, and you have to communicate with the coaching staff as to what they want from you. Jean, your thoughts on Morne van der Berg being on the bench with another senior scrum halves and mixed in with a younger scrum half system? There seems to be a theme with the Springbok coaching staff this season. I've not seen a team where it's both Corbus and then Faf in the team. They've always gone with the dual scrum half system.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing for the coaches is one, scrum half is probably, as much as it's a specialist position, it's probably the easiest one to train someone in. So you can get, I know Cheslin probably does reps for being scrum half and such, but it's also because of the nature of being a scrum half, having to be nippy, quick on your feet, having some pace to you, and the ability to keep going constantly. It's one of those things where, if, as we saw in the game against the All Blacks, where we set that record. Yeah, just want to clarify, we set the record against the All Blacks by giving them the biggest hiding ever. So you've got, there we had Cobus Reinach on the field for a full 80 and, well, 75 minutes. I think he was off for 3 for an HIA. And then, Grant went to the wing. So yeah, Morne van der Berg obviously brings something, and you can look at it in 2 different perspectives. So the way I'm looking at it is, Sasha is probably the youngest 10 we have. And in terms of caps, he's got the least amount of caps. I'm not saying he buckles under pressure or anything, but you're pairing a pretty green 10 with an experienced 9, right? So the 9 can tell him, listen, we're on the front foot, go, 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 or I need you to slow down, you're playing too fast. Let's just take it 2 degrees backwards. And then, Morne van der Berg with Manie Libbok, there you're going the opposite way. You've got a 10 with a bit more experience who can run the game for you. And you've got a younger 9 who you can use to dictate the pace. Should the game become, should it be a case of, we need pure speed now, then the 10 can just say, look, you're going to play 3 phases and then I'll call the move. So I think it's about balance for the Springbok coaches when you're looking at that 9-10 position. Can we have youth on one hand and experience on the other, and let them balance each other out? And then we don't have 2 young guys pushing too hard, or 2 veterans, reverting back to the old system when there's actually opportunities to be taken. That being said, Morne van der Berg, good athlete. He's been good with the Lions. Hasn't exactly set the Springbok jersey alight for me. But let's see what happens this weekend.
Yeah, I rate him. I think he's got minimal opportunities. From what I've seen, he's looked very sharp, accuracy and speed off the base, that type of thing. So yeah, him and Cornhorn, lots of speculation about Cornhorn's contract ending the end of the season, and maybe the Bulls or the Sharks poaching him. Reports are that Cornhorn was not keen on going overseas just yet, so that's also interesting. So yeah, we'll see the 2 of them sort of in the mix. The only Lions player in this team right now, Temikosi, is Boris van der Berg on the bench. Then, Mikosi, we've got a settled loose forward trio of Siya Kolisi, Captain Fantastic, Peter Steph Toy, Jasper Visser. Your thoughts on that, giving us sort of the platform to get victory this coming week, as well as Quagga Smith off the bench, another sort of stalwart of the team.
Yeah, I think basically they're kind of like the veterans that are there to balance out the whole younger players, especially in the back line. Because I think they have that leadership and on the field and off the field. So it will kind of help when they get Peter Steph Detoy doing Peter Steph Detoy things. It kind of gives platform for kind of like Sasha, because now he gets a good ball, he gets a time to play, he gets time to think about it. So I think most of them, what I'm wondering about them actually, now that you're speaking about it, is if I'm wondering if this is going to be like the senior contingent for the World Cup. I'm kind of wondering who those kind of players that will be on their 30s going up, they'll be part of the team. And I'm not sure about Quagga, but Peter Steph, I'm not sure about Peter Steph. Maybe Peter Steph and Sia will probably be those type of players that will be bringing in the experience to calm the kids down when situation becomes hard.
I agree. So, looking forward to the game. There will actually be Australia versus New Zealand. Prior to that, I apologize, actually. It's New Zealand versus Australia. It's at Eden Park. I wonder, can Australia get victory there? I don't think so. And then
I've got a feeling.
I hope
I've
so.
got a
Yeah.
feeling
I
because
hope so.
you think Australia's gonna do it? Yeah.
there's two things that happened this week.
Mm,
Two very important things. James O'Connor was spotted training with the Wallabies
mm.
um, in now I can't remember the city's name, but James O'Connor was spotted on the Wallabies Instagram, and big boy Will Skelton is in the squad. So those two things, and the Australians this year have been a team that wins in the last 20 minutes.
So you've heard it here first. Jean is picking Australia to defeat New Zealand at Eden Park at 5 past. Game kicks off at 5 past 7 this Saturday. Temikosi, you've got a wealth of knowledge of New Zealand rugby. Do you want to weigh in on who you think is going to take victory in this game?
I kind of agree. Like, if history is going to be broken, and we're talking about the most unbelievable way for that record to be broken, would be Australia winning it after the Springboks, the golden age that was coming to New Zealand failed. Wouldn't it be hilarious if Australia was to win it?
Okay. Just a friendly disclaimer. If you make any bets on Jean, Lisa B, or Teminkosi's predictions, we are not responsible for anything that happens. Unless you win, of course, then you owe us 5%. We move swiftly along to topic number 2 this week. Lots of the first of 2 major upsets this weekend. Even though Canada women were rated second in the world, they still defeated the reigning world champions, New Zealand, in a very highly anticipated. If you watched last week's episode, myself and Lisa B were very excited for this Friday night fixture. Yeah, so effectively what happened is Canada played an extremely fast off the base, multiple rucks at a time, within a very short space of time game plan. New Zealand were not able to adapt quickly enough. Eventually, over the course of the game, they did adapt. But by the time New Zealand were chipping back at the game, they had run out of time. Effectively, at the end, New Zealand were fighting to score a 7 point to get a 7 point score, try and hopefully conversion, just to make the score line a bit more reasonable. They were out the game because they could only score one more try. So well done to Canada. I picked them as my dark horse for the tournament. They're going up against England now in the final in England at Twickenham. So yeah, exciting game. New Zealand, I wonder how playing in South Africa the prior week and the physicality, did that help them or did that hinder them? Because Canada is also a very physical team. Jean, your thoughts on the Canadian women marching their way to the final of the Women's World Cup?
Yeah, it was an upset. I don't want to say it was an upset no one saw. I think a lot of us had like you said, had a bit of a feeling or a bit of a vibe coming into this match. And New Zealand women certainly they've got the flair and the pace to match. But I think it's, it when your composure starts slipping and you have to you have to chase the game, it becomes a different matter. And we've seen the Springboks fail at this. We've seen a lot of uh, um, proper test animal teams fail at chasing the game successfully. But yeah, like you said, Canada just they were relentless, playing off the base of the ruck with incredible speed. And I think that's where, if you've got a nine that you can rely on to make the decision of what he's going to do before he gets to the ruck. So when he gets to the ruck, I need the ball because I'm going to pass to this guy, and it just happens. Sort of like Faf de Klerk in his early days, Aaron Smith. It was very rare for them to get to a ruck and to stand around and look. Usually on the way in, they were already deciding what was going to happen, and they played from there. So I think having that kind of setup and that kind of pace, just it takes the wind out of your sails. And definitely, I think they played a very physical game against us. They had 6 days to recover, and then it's another physical game against the Canadian women, who, interestingly enough, is an amateur team. They are not full professional. And it's actually sad to sit here and say that a team sitting in the Rugby World Cup, vying for one of the biggest trophies in our sport, is amateur, when they should obviously be professional, because you can't say, oh, look, but the professionals lost to the amateurs. The amateurs are motivated. They want it and they want to prove a point. And when they win this, imagine where they could go being professional. So yeah, I'm very happy for Canada. Um, I won't say I'm happy that New Zealand lost, but they have held on to that cup for a really long time.
It's also worth noting that the next World Cup for women will also be in Australia. I would love for South Africa to host a men's and or women's Rugby World Cup. We have the infrastructure. Exactly why France got to host the World Cup twice within short succession, even though we did bid, is obviously a big sore point. And obviously, I enjoyed the fact that in Chasing the Sun too, Peter Steptoe brought that up as a motivation factor, because I was also thinking that, like, shouldn't it sort of rotate around and you had your chance, and so give someone else a chance as well. What's also quite iconic coming out of this game is that picture of Mia Ross sort of at the end of the game, almost looking sort of shocked and that type of thing. But a lot of positives coming out of this Women's Rugby World Cup. Yeah, I don't have any animosity towards the Black Ferns, the women's New Zealand team. I'm just really stoked for Canada. Themikosi, do you have any ideas on like what we can learn from the Canadian system, because they're also working with an unideal circumstances, as Jean alluded, and as you can get even more insight on our sister podcast, the Women's Rugby Trias, here on Global Gain Lines, along with the Interpro show, the Wall Street Journal broadcasting from the Gilead, as well as the URC Rewind, which is back up and running because the URC is starting this week. So like, subscribe, click the notification bell. Themikosi, what can we learn from the Canadian women who really took a mix of a team, players playing all over the world? They do not have a professional league in their own country, and yet they have made the final and they're going to face England.
I'm not sure how the system actually works, but for the fact that coming into the World Cup, they were already number 2 in the world, it seems like they have a similar system to kind of what Argentina has from the men's side, where all their players are all over the world, but they can get them together. But from my understanding, and this is like very limited knowledge. But from my understanding is that isn't Canada and the US the countries that are other than the Six Nations, aren't they the two that are also far ahead in terms of the women's game? I'm sure that that probably helps because I'm pretty sure that the US and Canada have some sort of league or something that kind of supports the women game more than the men's game. I'm not sure the specifics of it.
Yeah. So yeah, the USA, they do have a league. For how long, we don't know. But most of the Canadian women are like spread across that league and in Europe. But yeah, it's an interesting situation. I spoke to a bunch of people before the World Cup saying like, how did even our colleague you from the URC Rewind, how did Canada come second in the world, whereas like Ireland have better structures and that type of thing. And most people were like just shocked. It's There's a lot of passion for rugby in Canada, and a lot of their players, like some of their star players, are sort of ethnicities are like their dad's Dutch and their mom's South African, that type of thing. So yeah, one gains a lot of insight into this, having watched the women's rugby trials this season quite a bit. The other game that took place was England, favorites to win the tournament, versus France. France, sort of moving ahead, and putting Nom Nom Gate in their rearview mirror. Nom Nom Gate, if you're not aware, it's because the French player bit Aoife Wafer last week, in the quarterfinals when France defeated Ireland in controversial circumstances, because Ireland threw the line out in at the last minute, and the French player to stop the game just basically knocked on purpose. And I'm a bit unclear as to why that's allowed. But yeah, moving forward, the what was interesting about this game in particular is that England score, France score, and I think France might have actually scored first. I could be mistaken. No, England did score first. Um, England score, France score, and they were trading tries for the first half of the game and into the second half. However, when England score a try, they always convert. England scored 5 tries and they converted all of them. All the kicks were converted. Whereas France was struggling to keep up, even though they were answering with tries of their own, but they weren't getting any conversions. So that's an aspect. That's a thing that England have over the other teams in this tournament, is that they have consistent and confident place kickers from all kinds of angles. The other big aspect was more the England fierce, considering that one of the English players, her brother, showed up to the stadium wearing Abby Doe's brother, and this has gone viral on social media for good reasons. Abby Doe's brother showed up to the stadium dressed as Napoleon Bonaparte, at Waterloo. So apparently, this dude dresses up for banter, uh, of all his sister's international games as something related to the opposition. So we're anticipating he's going to. We haven't yet confirmation yet, but we're anticipating he's going to dress up as a Mountie for the upcoming final at Twickenham. Jean, your thoughts on England rumbling to the final at home?
Yeah, look, they're pretty much the one to lose it. They've put on a display, and they've got a team there, Avidal, Ellie Kildan, um, and then Cocaine here in the front row. They probably benefit the most from having a domestic professional league. So these women are, they're getting the same standard of care as the England gents. They're getting the same, S&C nutrition. They get a lot of match time, and they obviously spend a lot of time in camps together. And I think that the environment is benefiting them at this stage because they're at home. There's a lot of press, there's a lot of coverage, so it's certainly lifting their spirits. But I think honestly, and we saw this 3 years ago in the Women's World Cup. England was there in the final as well, and barring one or two th bounces of the ball going the opposite way, they'd have won the previous one. So it sort of does feel inevitable for them, but then it just takes the right shaped spanner in the right time, um, and Canada takes it. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting game. I'm very excited for it, but definitely the favor lies with England. I don't know. I haven't seen anything recent, but I did see over the weekend that Kildan might be out. She might not be able to play in the final. So that will certainly hamper them. But as I said, they've probably got the most depth and the most experience um, due to having that big domestic professional league. So yeah, it does feel inevitable for the Roses to take it.
That having been said, they were favourites for the last two World Cup finals, and they made the last two World Cup finals. But New Zealand, what's interesting about England is that they would go World Cup between World Cup and World Cup, and they'd go unbeaten, and then they get to the World Cup and they'd lose to New Zealand. Whereas New Zealand would drop a game here and there, and we were anticipating that it would be a New Zealand England World Cup again, despite Canada being ranked second. So I give Canada a shot. Canada's the underdog, so I think we'll all be rooting for them. What's also interesting is that there'll be two games. We tend to forget that New Zealand will be facing France, so they won't be flying home immediately. They'll be facing France for their third and fourth place playoff. So that gives the New Zealand players and the French players an opportunity to still express themselves in the World Cup. So that kicks off on Saturday at 1:30. I would encourage people to tune in for that. And then Saturday at 5 o'clock, it's the final. Canada versus England. England are the host nation. I don't know why they've nominated Canada first here. So and that will be at Twickenham. We don't mention Twickenham by its sponsor's name because they're not paying us. So why should we bother? So Temikosi, am I right in assuming you'll be joining myself and Jean and rooting for the Canadians this weekend just for the underdog sake of it?
I don't think there's ever a time where England is playing something in sports and people are rooting for England. Like I've never, like most sports, if England is playing, we all rather support the other team. So I feel like I'm gonna take that sports tradition and take it there to this game. But no, I think it would be for the game. It would be better if Canada win. It would be like everyone likes an underdog story.
And the thing is that they've got a real shot. Are they slight underdogs? Yeah, they're slight underdogs, but they've got a really good team. They've excellent coaching and they got good care. So yeah, oh Canada. Speaking of upsets, we move swiftly on to topic number three. Unfortunately, Temikosi, we do have to talk about this. The Lions lose another Currie Cup final two years in a row to a last minute penalty. What was Delport thinking, slapping the ball down? It's a mirror of the year before when they lost to the Sharks in the Currie Cup final. We'll just take a moment to watch Jordan Hendricks, I shall say, and veteran George Whitehead. The more things change, the more they stay the same, Tim Nkosi. What are your thoughts a few days after the final? I think Tim Nkosi is frozen. Oh my God, you pulled the plug. So yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube and or if you're listening to this on the podcast, we're watching Jordan Hendricks. I keep saying Jaden Hendricks because he's playing this weekend. Unfortunately, Jordan Hendricks is injured. Last minute penalty against his former team in the Lions in last year's Currie Cup final, where the Lions were slight favorites. This year, the Lions were significant favorites against underdogs from Kimberley, Griquas, and they pulled off the win.
But
Femikosi, you
how
back?
do you lose it? Yeah, can you hear me? Like how do you lose a game that you won? Like this is the second year in a row where you lost a game where you have done everything to win it, and last minute you lose it. But I recently watched the game like this morning, like early today, I watched the game again. And I have to say, the Griquas were kind of putting on the pressure. They were kept on attacking the whole game. The Lions could not exit. The only tries that they actually got was like from an unstructured play, like broken play, and the Lions capitalized on that. But otherwise, the set plays didn't quite go as well. They couldn't exit their half, which meant that once the Griquas got the ball, they just kept attacking and attacking and attacking. And as the game went on, the Lions' discipline was kind of not working out. They started to falter in their discipline, and that's when Griquas took the game.
What was Rowan Delport thinking? Interesting game. When Koen Horn made that break and put Kilian Peku in, I was thinking, oh dear, are the Lions going to put on the afterburners? Are the Lions now going to tap into all their wealth of experience playing in the United Rugby Championship for the last 4 years, playing Challenge Cup rugby for the last 3 years, and showing that they're used to a very high level of rugby? But to Griquas' credit, and we should really focus on Griquas. They hung in there. They made some silly mistakes themselves at times. They sort of pick and go quite well in moments, and then other times they allowed themselves to be isolated and the ball turn over. Yeah, Jean, did you enjoy watching this game from the couch?
Yeah, it was a pretty fun game. Definitely lots of excitement, lots of shouting. Um, yeah, honestly, I'll be honest with you. For the first 50 minutes, I couldn't say which team was going to win because it felt like the momentum would swing one way, then the other way. It felt like the Lions were getting on top, and then suddenly the Griquas are on top again. And then the closer it got to the end, the more I started feeling, listen, if the Lions don't start putting them away now, they're leaving the door open. And unfortunately, that's the reality. And it's minute 83, you're sweating, you're tired, you practically have the game won. Um, you're trying everything just to get that ball not to be passed, so the kick can't be taken, and then um, you end up conceding a penalty. Um, so yeah, I feel sorry for the Lions guy. He probably had to buy a lot of DOP to apologize to his teammates for that. Um, but yeah, so happy for Griquas, and I'm happy for community rugby. Like I'm honestly just happy for community rugby that teams like the Griquas, the Cavaliers, that these guys, they took down some giants in this year's Currie Cup season. And that's honestly, for me, that's amazing because it brings the gees, it brings the community vibe back to rugby because yeah, we all live and die for the Springboks, but you've got local oaks playing their heart out, yeah, for their community, for the love of the game, and for him, that's the closest he might ever get to being a Springbok. So let's celebrate him for one day like he is one. Um, so yeah, no, definitely very happy for them. And honestly, a fantastic final. I just want to give a shout out to the ref who, he kept the game in control. No one got away with anything silly. Nothing stupid happened. There's no controversy, nothing like that. I felt like it was a game that was on par in terms of officiating with what we expect of a test match or a URC final or a Champions Cup final.
I think it speaks to the excitement of this tournament, considering that the first game we ever covered on this show of this year's Currie Cup was Griquas being defeated by the Pumas in Mbombela Stadium. So they started their season off with a repeat of the SA Cup final, which is at the same venue. And we all thought that it was slightly more likely that the Pumas would make the playoffs than the Griquas, although we were like rooting for the underdogs. We had no idea that Boland would step up to that degree. What's also interesting is that the team that played against the Pumas is not distinctly very different from the team that played in this final. So that speaks to the quality of the strength and conditioning of the Griquas. Yes, you need to have a degree of luck in terms of injuries in any sport. However, We look at the amount of injuries that the Stormers reported this week. We look at the amount of injuries that the Sharks reported this week. Griquas, we did speak about because of the fact that the regular season is 7 straight weeks, no buys, semi-final, final. So if you make to the final, you legitimately play 9 weeks in a row. So Griquas managing their squad, and now many of their players are being rewarded for their hard work. Captain Sebo Glamini, notoriously from having come through the Bulls youth system, choosing not to sit on the bench for the Bulls at 23 years old, or sort of being behind a depth chart, and choosing to go to the Griquas. And the Griquas need to be given credit for this type of recruitment. So his tight head prop should be with the Sharks right now. On the overseas tour, he has been named in the team for the Sharks for the overseas tour. He's been loaned from Griquas to the Sharks. That's what's super interesting. URC teams can loan players from non-URC franchises and any team outside of South Africa if they choose to do so. For example, there's a lock that played for the Bulls in the URC last season and then played for the Sharks URC last season. It just escapes me. Dion Slabbert, yeah. So he actually appeared for the Bulls in the regular season and then played against the Bulls for the Sharks in the URC semi-final at Loftus. So well done to Sebo Glamini. I was incredibly impressed with his ability this season. I'm glad he's coming to my team, which is stoked. And we do need younger, strong, tight head props in our team. Other players that have been called up, not Cameron Ofka, unfortunately, but I'm sure he'll get his chance sometime soon. Dylan Mart's been called up to the Stormers squad. That's a positive. Gershon Ware, who appeared in the first fixture for the Sharks in the URC last season as injury cover, he was drafted in on loan for us, and he played for like two minutes when we lost to Connacht in Galway, windy Galway. I anticipate the depth in South African rugby that Zwelin Daba is not in some sort of URC team speaks to the quality we have available. This just today, Caleb Abrams was also drafted to the Stormers system. So, yeah. Demi Kosi, your thoughts on Griquas and the incredible victory?
I actually had a question before I answer that. Does the URC have like some sort of system where you have to announce your squad before you start playing?
It's actually a bit more informal. Unlike football, it's more of a malleable announcement. So there are a degree of restrictions, but not as tight as you might think, because of the nature of rugby. Where in terms of EPL football, you have to name a certain amount of players so that you don't stockpile players, and then you can supplement that during the January transfer window and or with young players. But with rugby, it's there's a little more leeway in terms of which players can play, which there are restrictions in terms of you can't just draft someone in for a quarterfinal, semi-final, final. They have to have played a certain degree of regular season games. So that's allowed the Sharks to actually loan 2 players from the Bulls. We also got the fullback whose name escapes me right now.
Mayor. Is it Mayor? Not Mayor.
Yeah, just returned from Scotland, and then he didn't play much for the Bulls, and then we had some depth issues, which speaks to like I always look at the depth chart of teams, and then I think, these guys are a bit thin at fly off, but now we have to consider that you can draft people in from other teams, which gives opportunities. Because I've spoken to some of the Pumas players recently, because the Pumas didn't make the Currie Cup knockouts. They're already in SA Cup preseason, but many of them are sort of on standby as it relates to possibly getting a call up by a URC team. And it doesn't just mean they could get recruited by a URC team. There are French teams, French D2 teams, other URC teams other than South African teams that could recruit, especially the Scottish and the Welsh teams. They could do with quality individuals such as Zwelin Daba, and Cameron Ofka hasn't been called up. Conor Mahoney didn't come off the bench, but I mean, like, why doesn't the Irish team pull him in? So yeah, your thoughts on Griquas, Thembinkosi?
Yeah, just to finish on that, because my question was gonna be, if there's so many players, like I'm glad that Dylan Mott actually got a dollars come up because he was playing phenomenal rugby. That try-saving tackle that he did on who's this? What's the wing? What's the wing's name? He escaped my name right now. Dylan Mott was Angela Davis. Like that try-saving tackle he did on Angela Davis, and I think that was kind of revenge for what Angela Davis did to him on the other side of the try line. But to carry on what I was previously saying is that I was wondering, since we have other teams like your Griquas, your Boland, all of those things, why can't we just, when we have when we have an injury to, um, let's say I have an injury in the Lions team at scrum up, why can't I just replace that guy that is injured with maybe another person from the Griquas? That was kind of good. That was kind of what my question was. But to answer your question before you just move on, I think the Griquas played amazing. They who's this? The team? George Whitehead. George Whitehead was made sure he knew when to kick the ball up where Dylan Mott needs to chase, or when to kick the ball out where it's just to find touch and just pin the Lions in their own half. I think I saw him also attempt a couple of drop goals. Unfortunately, none of them actually succeeded, but that would have been great if he also got a drop goal. How old is he? I think he's like 30, 36 now, and he's still playing like that.
Yeah, George Whitehead, very much a veteran, has played all over the place. I think he came to prominence when he played for the Southern Kings. That's when people really started to see him. Do you have any final thoughts on the Currie Cup final, Jean, or can we move on?
Yeah, no, look, Thembinkosi touched on a very important aspect there, with the attempted drop goals from George Whitehead, and I think that's sort of where the Lions' grip on the game started sliding, was the fact that when the Lions were probably at their peak, trying to being real proud of themselves, like, we're defending, we're keeping these guys out, it's all good. Um, then they try a drop goal. So I think, that really pushed them back, and they saw that, listen, these guys they're not going 100%, they're going 110%. Like, they'll drop goal us to death if they have to. And I think that's where the grip started to slide, because now you're suddenly thinking, well, first it was, we have to keep them off the try line. Now we have to keep them probably out of the 22 as much as possible, but probably further than that, maybe out of the 35, that we have to keep them out. So we have to start defending further and further and further away from our try line, because if we give them the range, they're going to take a shot. And now you're in the position of having to charge down. So I think that was, like Thembinkosi said, none of those drop goals came off, but I think mentally it shook the Lions to a certain extent. The fact that the Griquas showed up, and they had that intent in them to say, listen, if you give us half a chance, we'll take 3 points and accept the ball on kickoff. So yeah, no, definitely the Griquas showed up with intent, and at the end of the day, I think they wanted it more.
I also have to give a special shout out to Lulubelo Dubela, who had a very pivotal penalty kick to take late in the game to put the Lions in the lead. Even though they didn't win, it wasn't an easy kick, and he stepped up for a young guy.
Yeah.
Yes, he's 27. He hasn't had a lot of sort of senior rugby per se, more from the seven system. Interesting enough, he signed with the Lions from Griquas along with Shoblom. So these oaks left Griquas to the Lions, and then Griquas still. So Griquas losing all these players and still winning a Currie Cup all these years with less resources. Hopefully we get some of these teams playing international games as well. We can get them into a tournament somewhere, somehow, Super Rugby, other European tournaments. I want to see Cheetahs, I want to see Pumas, I want to see Griquas, I want to see Boland Cavaliers. I don't care if people say, oh, Kimberley's a small town or Wellington's a small town, or but the Bloemfontein's not even that big a town. Mombella's quite a large city, so it is a major metro. So yeah, congrats to them. We move swiftly on to predicting round one of the United Rugby Championship. All right, this Friday evening, Stormers versus Leinster. Leinster have sent a somewhat more robust team than they've sent before. I think people have seen them walking around the waterfront. Temikosi, who you got, Stormers or Leinster?
It's interesting because I think all of them don't have their best players because I'm not sure. It started raining this side, so I'm not sure if this is gonna come out on the sound. But so the Stormers are not would have they don't have their box, and Leinster doesn't have their British and Irish Lions, if I'm correct. So it's gonna be interesting to see, and I'm interested to find out if the what is who's Clayton? Is it Clayton? The guy from the Pumas, the 10 that they just got. It would be interesting to see if now that Limbok is not there, Sasha is not there, who's going to play the 10? Are they going to give him a chance? Are they also going to give like Dylan March a chance in that match? So it's interesting to see how it will go. But if I had to pick a side, Stormers because they're home.
Yeah, maybe Clinton Swart gets a run out. Who else do they have? We've got Chris Smith, sorry, Kyle Smith, but he's quite young. And I forget there's another guy in between them who's got a bit more experience from last year, but his name escapes me at this moment. Jean, who you got, the Weathermen or the Irish?
Uh, I just have a feeling the Irish is going to grind them down. Stormers have a tendency to overplay, almost similar to the Springbok women. They'll try and run it from anywhere. They'll try and pull off something when it's 100% not on. And I think it wouldn't surprise me if the Stormers shoot themselves in the foot. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna back Leinster simply because that system that they have, it's so well drilled. Um, I'm gonna have to go with Leinster, even if both teams are weakened. Um, I think also again that system just because of how like machine-like Leinster is, where they're sharing their playbook down to high school level, and the high schools in that province of Ireland, run the playbook at a very basic level. So the guys in high school, you're already learning how to play like Leinster. So when you get to the academy and you getting just additional things added onto the playbook and a couple of more things. So I think the Leinster system at the end of the day is what's going to grind it in their favor.
Yeah, it's difficult to sometimes predict games when you don't see it at the team sheet. That's also an aspect to consider. Also, what's also interesting is that some teams purposefully are obtuse about what players they brought on tour and that type of thing, so that you don't show your hand to the opposition too soon. I do anticipate that because it's the first URC game in a while, it's going to be at Cape Town Stadium. It might actually get very good attendance. I'm interested to see how that pans out. Hopefully, more attendance than the Currie Cup Final. It was quite disappointing at Ellis Park that it wasn't really. It was actually less attended than the previous Currie Cup Final. So the Lions and Saru really need to sit down and figure out how to get people more into Ellis Park, especially for a final. Maybe make the tickets cheaper or that type of thing. In fact, let's go down that rabbit hole for a moment.
They just need to win a game.
They just need to win a game. So Timmy, you heard it here first. Timmy Kosi says the way the Lions get people back into that ginormous stadium. See, having a really big stadium can be quite a negative sometimes. So in your province, you would kind of rather want a big stadium, much like Leinster have in Dublin, where you have your pick of larger stadiums and smaller stadiums like the RDS and that type of thing. So that if the Lions had access to something like an affluent stadium and they knew that the attendance was going to be that massive, they only got 12,500 people is not a little people, but if you put it in Ellis Park, it can look quite unatmospheric. Your thoughts, Sean, on how the Lions can persuade you to drive down to Joburg from Pretoria?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to say, get people to the stadium, and I um I remember on one of the social media platforms there was a guy who was traveling down from Ireland to come and watch his team play at Loftus. And he was like, "How many people?" And I was like, "You're going to see a fair amount of people, but the stadium's not going to be packed. First of all, it's a World Cup level stadium. Let's just put that out there. Most of our stadiums are World Cup level stadiums. Secondly, for most South Africans, I can't go there, have 6 beers, and come back. So, someone needs to take me. They need to not drink. I think the one thing that counts in Ellis Park's favor, and I actually do want to try this, maybe when the Lions and the Bulls have a derby match, is to actually try the Prasa train. Um, because the Prasa train literally runs to the stadium. And to take the Prasa train there, watch the match, take the Prasa train back. So just to experience it, and I know from friends who've done it that they said it worked extremely well. You take the train, you get there, you have a good time, match is over, you walk out, you get back on the train, end up back here in Pretoria side. So yeah, I think mostly like Tim and Corsi said, first of all, your main thing as a rugby team is win the rugby match. Once you start winning the matches, people are gonna want to come, and then you can start putting on the add-ons, your artists performing and your shows. Um, I think one lesson that the other unions can learn from your team, the Sharks, is make it more of a family vibe. What the Sharks have done at Kings Park is absolutely fantastic. There's play areas for the kids, there's water slides, it becomes a real family outing. There's none of that here in Gauteng, and I think that's sort of where the Sharks have an edge, because then you'll get a lot more people going with their families, because they get to spend the day there.
Yeah, they've really put a lot of effort into trying to address numerous aspects and trying to marginal gains the attendance at Kings Park, including putting in a paddle pool for the Leinster players to try and kill themselves and by flipping in that side. I know you're happy that you won, dude, but don't get paralyzed. So yeah, speaking of the Sharks, they're taking on former champions Glasgow. Um, at on Friday at 9:05. And unfortunately, as a Shock supporter, considering that we've got unavailability of 9 players to the Springbok camp, as well as 18 other players injured in the broader squad, and looking at the team that we've sent over to Scotland in this 3-match tour, which I don't hold out much hope for. I think it was a very tough start of the season, including Sebo Glamini, who's on the team squad list, but obviously he's not there. He's busy imbibing alcohol, celebrating winning the Currie Cup. So even when he does fly over to Europe, I wonder what state he's going to be in. Yeah, I don't see the Sharks winning this. I think Jamie Dobie, if he starts on the wing or if he starts at scrum half, he's going to be highly influential. This Glasgow team has an overabundance of really cool mullets, and that in Scotland is very important to winning. So yeah, as the Shock supporter, I would pick a Glasgow victory. I think we're going to have a tough start to the season. Temi Kosi?
I think I'm inclined to go with you. However, I'm curious to see what the Pumas coach his new role is gonna be at the Sharks. Maybe that will kind of strengthen them up, give them that little bit of discipline that they didn't have, because he seemed like he's a hard man of structure. So maybe him being in the coaching setup might tighten up the squad a little bit. I'm not sure, but as the first match, uh, Glasgow at home, I just gonna be too much.
Yeah, if things go as they are going right now, Jimmy Stoners might have to start at fly half for the Sharks. Jean, who you got?
I'm actually backing the Sharks. I know it's South Africans, foreign land, strange weather, and the very real possibility of them all having too much whiskey the night before the game. But I think there's an opportunity there for the Sharks. Um, Glasgow, obviously, they're also without their internationals. I think pretty much all the URC teams are down to second strings. I think the one thing that the Sharks might actually have in their favor is the fact that some of their players have rotated through the Currie Cup team. So there's a bit of match fitness there, and the skills are just a bit sharper. You can play as many warm-up matches as you want, but playing in actual tournament rugby, that's where you sharpen skills, you get the edge back. So I think if there's an edge for the Sharks, it will be the fact that they've rotated some players through. And yeah, just youth. I think after seeing what the Springboks achieved with a young team, a lot of coaches will be encouraged to send younger guys out and not rely so much on known quantities. Um, a team full of youngsters can any day just decide, not today.
Yeah, I like your enthusiasm, John. I hope the Sharks win, but it seems somewhat unlikely. I look forward to the game, though. Two really, really good games on Friday night. So starting at 7, all the way out into the evening into 11. The next South African game on the schedule will be the Bulls hosting the Ospreys at 2 o'clock kickoff at Loftus Versfeld. The start of Johan Ackerman's tenure as Bulls coach. First competitive game. Jean, who you got?
Bulls by 30. And
Excellent.
if Willie Leroux plays, Bulls by 50.
Yeah, those poor Welshmen. Demikosi, was your money on?
I'm gonna go with the Bulls. I think Ackerman is about to do well. Let's see what he does first. Let's see his first game, because he said it's going to be an interesting squad that he's going to pick. So let's see.
Yeah. If the Ospreys somehow pull off a victory, we're not going to hear the end of it from you and producer Lee. The the final South African game on the schedule for this week 1 of URC fixtures is the Lions away to Cardiff. Unfortunately, Chris Smith got a concussion in the Currie Cup Final, so he won't be starting. It will either be Dobela. I haven't heard any news about Kate Voliter. He's been out the team. I hope he didn't catch an injury in the Currie Cup. So it's interesting to see who's going to fly off for the Lions and what type of condition they're going to be in immediately going on tour. Interestingly enough, the Lions last year lost the Currie Cup at Ellis Park to the Sharks, but then they played at home. They didn't go on tour immediately. So the Sharks were the team who had to go immediately on tour, to the best of my knowledge. I could be mistaken, immediately after playing a very competitive Currie Cup game. Tim Nkosi, your thoughts on your Lions taking on Cardiff in Wales?
I think they should be able to come out with a result. I mean, they basically just had an entire preseason where they played 6 or 7 games in the Currie Cup. That was basically the same squad that's going to be playing at Cardiff. So I'm hoping that gives them an edge. But with Chris Smith out and Dobela in, I'm kind of concerned. I was hoping if Chris was there, I was hoping that he could deal with the European tour and Cape Voliter and and Dobela could be fine in Ellis Park, because so far they have not been good on tour.
Yeah, I mean, there's also Gio Lombard, but I don't know if he's fit either. I've not seen a touring squad announcement from the Lions. Do you have any insight for us on that regard, Demikosi?
I haven't seen it also. I was hoping that some of them would be releasing. I think they're also doing that thing where they don't announce the touring squads because they don't want to give away the team.
Yeah. So on that note, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Like, subscribe, click the notification bell. There's a lot of really good rugby to enjoy this weekend. Rugby Championship, 2 fantastic games, 2 great Women's World Cup games on Saturday, a whole host of URC games. So on that note, from myself, Tim Nkosi and Jean, until next week, in Rassi, we trust.